I've had requests for, and I tried to find my Tampa hat, couldn't find it. But I've had requests for a video discussing why Tampa missed the playoffs. Tampa is an interesting example of how one season isn't necessarily the same as the rest. Last year, Stamkos gets hurt and the team didn't skip a beat. In fact, the team seemed to take a step back when he came back in the playoffs. It seemed to throw them off. But what a difference the season makes. When Stamkos goes out, which is November 15th, was the last time he played. It was against the Red Wings. That was a win. After that game, they were 10-6-1. Decent record. They're doing well. They won the first two games after Stamkos got hurt. Everything looked fine. Then they lose their 20th game of the season, which was against the Predators. But 12-7-1 through the first 20, that's not bad. That'll do. That's a 100-point pace. They won their next game against the Flyers again. They're alright. And then it started to fall. So they lost to Columbus, they lost to Boston, they lost to Columbus, they lost to St. Louis. They beat Washington in a shootout. Then they beat Carolina in overtime. Then they lost to Vancouver. They lost to Pittsburgh. Beat Vancouver, or beat Calgary. Lost to Vancouver again. Lost to Edmonton in a shootout. And from there, just, at that point, they were 15-14-3. They ended up close. And I said at the end of the regular season, give another 2 weeks for these guys, they're in the playoffs. And I still believe that. I still believe Tampa, likely with 2 extra weeks on the season, Tampa would get that last playoff spot either from Boston or Toronto. Because Tampa was playing fantastic hockey without Stamkos. But the Stamkos injury caused them to have enough of a wobble after that 20-game mark that they never were able to make up for that. I don't know that the goaltending situation helped them either. I think the Bishop move, if they'd been able to do it sooner, maybe they weren't able to do it sooner. For all I know, Yzerman was working the phones for months before that deal got made, and this was the best he could do, so he just makes the deal. Vasilevsky, shaky his first few games as a starter, and then really picked it up towards the end of the year, and now looks like he's a starter for years to come. There's no way Tampa misses the playoffs next year. Even if Stamkos has some kind of an injury setback and ends up on the shelf again, there's no way Tampa misses the playoffs again next year. The Tampa Bay Lightning, this is going to be one of those seasons, and it happens. It happens where teams that are really, really good just miss the playoffs. I'm going to go through and I'm going to take a look just to prove that I'm not lying to people. I mean, the Ducks in 2009-2010 missed the playoffs. They had 89 points that year. They had 99 the year after and 91 the year before. They were in the second round the year before. They lost in the first round the year after, but they were out that one year. Arizona, no. Boston, no. No, I can't qualify Boston in this. No, I can't qualify Buffalo in this either. Calgary had a lot of years out of the playoffs. Interesting here. Interesting. 91 season, the Flames are a 100-point team, second in the Smythe. Following season, they have 74 points. They missed the playoffs. The following season, 92-93, they have 97 points, and they're back in the playoffs. So I'll leave it at that. I don't need to find a whole lot of examples. It's just it does happen where a good team misses the playoffs. And that Flames team back in 92, they're playing in a league of what, 22 teams? 24 teams? 16 make the playoffs, and they missed. This is a 30, next year 31 team league. 16 teams make the playoffs. Half the league misses the playoffs. It is not easy to make the playoffs anymore. And yet, it seems like teams that miss the playoffs get ridiculed more now than they did in the 80s, when 16 out of 21 teams made the playoffs. It was hard not to make the playoffs. You had to really work at it. Ask New Jersey and Pittsburgh when they were trying to race to get Lemieux. They had to really work at that. That was a really tense battle for last place overall. Pittsburgh won it by a nose. They get Lemieux. New Jersey gets Kirk Muller. Very good player, Kirk Muller. Fantastic player. Stanley Cups to his record as well. Probably not in the same breath as Mario Lemieux, though, when you mention Hall of Famers. For the Lightning to lose Stamkos, it cost them the playoffs. Because the points in November, points in December, it's all the same points as in March. It's all the same points as in April. And, I mentioned it in the video about the Islanders and about Carolina. When you lose early in the season and you put yourself behind, in this case, when you fall out of that playoff position, it is really hard to get back in. It is really difficult. You need teams ahead of you to be losing in regulation, and you need to be picking up wins in regulation. You can't just be picking up a point here and there. Not when you're 10, 11 points out. And at certain points in the season, Tampa was pretty damn far out. Part of the reason I think why the Bishop deal happens is because they're like, well, we're not making the playoffs this year, so we might as well pitch him. Get something back for him before he's a free agent. So, if you're a fan of the Lightning, the good news is this is the only year you're going to miss. The bad news is Stamkos is now a guy who's getting injured a lot. You have to start to wonder, is Stamkos... I don't want to say damaged goods because he's too young for that. Sidney Crosby certainly missed a lot of games not too long ago, and there were a lot of us wondering, is Crosby done? And then Crosby had that half season where he wasn't playing very well before Mike Sullivan came in. And there's a lot of whispers about Crosby. Maybe he's not the Crosby he was. Maybe those head injuries got to him. So I'm not going to speculate on Stamkos that way. I'm not going to put like a Red Cross symbol over his name like one of my hockey magazines used to do with anybody who got hurt regularly. Put a little first aid logo over top of him. And it's like, no, you can't predict it unless it's Sami Salo. I love Sami Salo a lot, but you could almost set your watch by him getting hurt. It's going to be tough for Tampa to be this bad again, because there's so much to like with their roster. You look at Hedman on the blue line, you look at their forwards, and even without Stamkos, it is an impressive bunch. Kucherov almost dragged them to the playoffs, seemingly single-handedly. Unless you looked at the work of Victor Hedman as well. And because Victor Hedman was nominated for the Norris Trophy, it seems like people were paying attention. Seems like a lot of people were paying attention. Stamkos is good. Stamkos is very good. But there's enough in the Tampa Bay Lightning's locker room to make up for the loss of him. The trick that Yzerman's going to be having to pull every summer, because there's so many good players on this team, is keeping it all under the cap. But that's for next year. I feel bad for Tampa fans because I really believe if it was Tampa against the Capitals, Tampa pulls off that upset. Absolutely. I have no doubt in my mind that if Tampa was against Capitals in the first round, I would have been like, well, great, Capitals are out. Before the playoffs, it would have been like, all right, well, there goes that prediction. Capitals are done. And the Lightning would have knocked them out. The Lightning were playing some fantastic hockey down the stretch. And the Capitals, while they were playing very, very well, and they won the President's Trophy, I don't think Tampa would have been a good matchup for them, even without Stamkos. I think Stamkos starting to skate towards the end of the year, I think that was to give the players a lift and maybe that if they make the playoffs, maybe it would psych out the opponent to make, if it was Washington, to make them think, all right, maybe we should be ready for Stamkos and prepare for Stamkos just in case he comes back, just to give him one extra piece to worry about. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where Tampa goes from here. I will be doing off-season videos. I've been asked, in the light of what I did with the Maple Leafs, will I be doing videos like that with other teams? I'm going to be doing videos on who teams have, who's going to be unrestricted, and what moves they need to do to stand to the cap, and where I think they need to make moves. Just as a fan, of course, not as some educated expert of hockey analytics. But I for me, Tampa doesn't have to do very much. They just have to keep everything under the cap. I like their team a lot, and I think that this is just going to be a minor setback. Most of their players are still in their prime, so Hedman's just entering his prime now. He's going to be a lot of fun to watch. As good as Karlsson is, I think Karlsson and Hedman are going to be butting heads over who wins the Norris next year. Burns had a career year. Burns was fantastic, but I really think it's going to come down to Karlsson and Hedman next year. Anyways, let me know what you guys think. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. And thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you all again soon.